do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning and welcome all to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and we do right off the bat thank you for your listenership. Thank you for calling in. The chat room is open, and we have some people in there already. Be good one. JJ is in. Thank you, JJ. T.S. Win Ann is in. Thank you. And callers are blasting in already, and that's a good thing. Don't forget, when you do call in, which is this number here, 516-453-9921, make sure that you press the number 1 button if you have a question or VGQ, and you will go in a rotation, and that will be good and give Mr. Fuller a chance to comment or answer your question. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. And I will, at some point, maybe not this show, but at some point I will read your Gmail. Now, I would ask, ma'am, I would ask, sir, please, do not write me a novel because I cannot read it. We just simply don't have the time on live radio to read it properly. So just be brief so that I can ask Mr. Fuller your question, and if you have one of them names, and I'm not real good at pronouncing names, so phonetically spell it for me so I can at least give you a proper greeting. We can do that. All the books are in, and that's good. And again, the chat room is open, and I think we are ready to go. So let me do this. We said last week, Mr. Fuller. Oh, good morning, Mr. Fuller. I'm sorry. Good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay. From last week's show, a person called in, Swa called in from L.A., and had a question that you mentioned that you wanted to answer, and I asked him to Gmail me, and he did, and I'm going to start today's show off by reading his question. Swa says this. He says, Mr. Fuller, during the destruction and mistreatment of the Jews during the Holocaust, do you think the Jews could have been found clowning, dancing, and squabbling around, or do you think they were serious about preventing their destruction? I asked this question because in the present day, during the destruction and mistreatment of black people, blacks do not seem serious about improving their situation. Swa from University of California, Berkeley.
Well, it's been my observation that most people are very serious about serious things, but black people have a long reputation for being serious about everything that's silly and silly about everything that's serious. That's our rep. And it's been justifiably earned because we are sort of trained that way. That's why we turned out to be the slaves of the system of white supremacy very easily and have remained so and are known to be just that. We are under the system of white supremacy, and they set it up and made it that way. And you can you can't very well compare black people's situation with anybody's situation that has ever been in recorded history, because a complete job was done on black people. Other people, down to the ages, many people have mistreated people. White people themselves have mistreated each other. But the people who are being mistreated have somehow managed to limit the damage done by the mistreatment, all down through history. Different tribes, even today in 2020, mistreat each other, and people within a tribe mistreat each other. But usually the damage is done on a limited basis. It'll be a few years here and a few years there, and then things will die down for a long period of time, and then mass mistreatment will set in again at some other point. But black people worldwide have been under the system of white supremacy consistently, and the mistreatment is well ingrained. So it's just no comparison between the enslavement of black people with any other people that has ever been in recorded history. None. Zero. Black people have been mistreated more than anybody and have participated on a mass scale in mistreating each other because of the mistreatment that they receive, because mistreatment is something that black people almost worship. We, even today in 2020, just joking around, what we call just innocent jokes and whatnot, is usually some type of put down, even in our language. It's just our custom of doing things, particularly in the Northwestern Hemisphere. The closer black people have been to white people, the more disparaging black people act toward each other and toward everything that they encounter. Very destructive we are. Very destructive. I mean, have almost total contempt for anything that has constructive value. But we have been trained that way. And so when we start talking about making those comparisons, there's really no comparison in the devastation that black people have endured down through as far back as anybody can remember, even in old drawings on rocks, to the extent that the people had some type of paint. You'll see black people in several conditions, always blackness, anybody with black skin. I mean, something to be disdained. Something to have total contempt for. Why? Because they don't matter. They're worthless. They're just in the way. Where did they come from? I mean, how did anybody even think to create something like a thing called a black person? Why would anybody even do that? Why would the Creator do that? My goodness. I mean, get it out of sight. I mean, we can't stand even for it to be around, except to kick around. And that's the reputation that we have right here in 2020, more than anybody on the planet. And so it's our job to see to it this year, before this year is out, if we can, that reputation is no longer valid at all, period.
Alrighty.
That's what the compensatory code, that's what this program is supposed to be about. Making it the way that it ought to have been in the first place.
Alrighty. Okay, let's do this. Let's go to area code 310, and it looks like it's Rosa Lee, but let's see here if I can get you in here. Unless I pronounced it wrong. It said Rosa Key, but is it Rosa Key or Rosa Lee?
It's Rasa Key.
Rasa Key. Okay, there you go, Rasa Key. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning to Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
And you, Mr. Bobby.
Already?
Yeah, so I have a VGQ. The last question and the response by Mr. Fuller, I think, was right on point. And this platform, period, is one of the best educational platforms I think that's going on. So I take my hat off to the efforts of Mr. Fuller and Mr. Bobby. And my question is, Mr. Fuller, are you familiar with Bob Marley?
I'm familiar with the name and the fact that he was a musician and what most people call an activist with a very keen mind about racial issues. I guess that's a correct description. That's the one that I've always heard about. That's just that's just about it. To my knowledge.
Okay, I just wondered if you ever listened to his music.
I have, but I don't have an ear for it. Like I don't have an ear for rap. My ear for what we call musical sounds goes back to the 1920s and 30s and 40s. It doesn't even extend into the middle of the 1950s. So I just...
Okay.
Now, what do I mean by I don't have an ear for it? A lot of times I don't even know what the words are because over a period of years, the words and sounds, I was raised up at a time when Nat King Cole and people like that, you could hear every word precisely. And the drums and the background sound of the instruments didn't drown out the singer. But over a period of years, people who are born, they're very attuned to it because I'm always asking sometimes. I'm saying, what is the person saying? Because I can't make out not one word of most singers nowadays. But that's just me. You got to figure my age and all like that. And the time that I came up, a person on the radio singing a song, there was no mistake about what was being said. You didn't have to grasp for it. It wasn't drowned out by the drums and all the background, all the guitars playing at the same time, and all of the acoustics. The words were precise. You could hear every word, of the singer. The background didn't upstage the sounds that were coming from the singer. But over a period of time, that turned out, in my opinion, to be just a change in the style of songs being sung. So I just didn't pick it up. And so I've never heard Bob Marley's song or many of the songs that other people were singing where I could even make out what's being said, in particular during the hip-hop era. I never know what a hip-hop singer is saying at all. It's just to me a lot of sounds. I never know what's being said. But there are people who can sing along right with it. And that to me is phenomenal. They know every word. And I can't make out a single word. I just hear a lot of sounds. That's all.
All righty. Thank you, Rosaki, very much for your call, and don't be a stranger, sir. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the Great Northwest in the 315 area code, and we have Ronald from Seattle. Ronald, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning. And what is your question?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. My area code is I'm from New York, but I'm actually in Seattle right now.
Okay.
Yes. Mr. Fuller, I enjoy when you talk about logic. My question to you, is it logical for there to be a God, a loving creator, along with racism, white supremacy, on the same planet at the same time?
I guess people say that it is, according to logic. You mean all of the destruction that is allowed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? That's what you mean?
Yes. Is it logical for that for those two entities to be on the same planet at the same time?
Well, apparently it is. So I would say that that's logical. You always accept what you're looking at, what's really going on, and try to find out the truth about it. So whatever created the universe has allowed or I don't know what, how would you describe it, but it is here. The mistreatment of people, the brutality of people against each other is going on right here in front of our eyes. So you might say that the creator of the universe either engineers this or allows it to be engineered by the people. Now, people are argumentative about why the Creator would do this, and other people will say that the Creator is not doing it, that the devil is doing it. And so that gets to be in the realm of the various religious arguments, which, according to the code, I'm not at liberty to indulge in when it comes to any type of taking sides on religious issues, except one, according to the code, under eclectic pluralism, under the seventh area of activity. There is a manufactured religious title. I say it's just a title of what already exists, and that's curiosity about all religions. And it minimizes conflict, or designed to minimize conflict, or to eliminate conflict, or prevent conflict between non-white people about religious issues. This is in the textbook of Victims of White Supremacy. It's a word that I made up, a term that I made up called eclectic pluralism. And I found that it works very well. And that is, what is it? It's searching for the true religion, which means you listen to everybody talk about his or her religion as being, and most people who have a religion say they have the true religion. So you listen to everybody who says that, because somebody is telling the truth and somebody is not. So eclectic pluralism says you don't get into any type of religious argument, or really, by extension, according to the code, black people are not supposed to have arguments with each other about anything. They just express points of view. That's what VGQ is all about, Victims Guaranteed Qualification. You are totally qualified to say anything about race, racism, and or counter-racism, or anything that directly or indirectly associated with racism, including religion. But the strongest religion in the world, according to the code, is the system of white supremacy. The religion of white supremacy is stronger than all of the other religions combined. Why? Because it's the most effective religion. Everybody of color bows down to the religion of white supremacy. When the white supremacists come around and say, I don't care what kind of religion you got, I'm here now, and I'm telling you that you, with your black self, will do what I tell you to do, or else. And black people have fallen in behind that religion. All of the evidence shows this. I don't care what kind of religion a black person claims they have. When the white supremacists come around, that show is over. And they have proven that. See, they prove what they say. Other people talk about what they think they believe in, and we love to play the game of my religion is better than yours. That's among black people throughout the world. But when the white supremacists come around, nobody gets in the white supremacist's face with their religion and make it stick. No black person has done it yet. So until I see evidence that some religion is more powerful than the religion of white supremacists, then I'm looking for the true religion that has proven to be more powerful, and none have done that yet.
Okay. Ronald, thank you so much for your call. And you say you're in Seattle. Well, have a safe trip back to the East Coast, my brother.
Okay, thank you.
All right, don't be a stranger. 516-453-9921 is the number you can call, and be sure when you do call that number to give the call screener your name and I guess your location, and we'll see if we can get you on. If you just want to listen to the program, you can, as some have and are doing. 7, Mr. Bobby is, wait a minute. Yeah, 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com is my Gmail address. Be good, it says this, Mr. Fuller. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Earlier this year, or late last year, somebody asked you, Mr. Fuller, about motivation or something along those lines, on how can you be up feeling good and the next morning feeling down. I've tried to find out that show, but haven't found it yet. Mr. Fuller, can you talk about, and then my screen just moved. Mr. Fuller, can you talk about motivation a little, just the way you talked about it was constructive?
It's very simple codification under the system of white supremacy, what black people should do. And that is, you do nothing and say nothing except what produces constructive results. It's taken me all this time, I guess. I mean, just to come up with that simple formula. It was right there all the time, and it's been there for everybody, really. But all black people have to do to come out of the condition that we're in, every day that you get up, you say, now, I'm fixing to do something right now in the next 5 minutes or something. That's something that I'm fixing to do. Is it going to produce a constructive result or a non-constructive result? Because there's no such thing as in between. Every move that you make, you sit down to eat breakfast in the morning, you look at the food that's on the plate, and you just ask a simple question. This food that I'm looking at, when I put it in my body, is it going to build my body up or tear it down? There's no such thing as in between, because that food that you're putting in your body is going to do one thing or the other. I mean, you got some type of corn flakes in there. What's the ingredients in those corn flakes? They put it in small print most of the time. And even when you read the small print, you can't make out what it means because they speak in a very, very foreign language. That's what I've seen in the ingredients in just about every product you get off the shelf in a grocery store, where it's advertised as tasty, and even sometimes they'll extend tasty and healthy. But are they telling the truth? Healthy how? Is it constructive or non-constructive? Is it going to build up your body and mind, or is it going to do damage to your body and mind? And that's just for openness. And then when you walk out and breathe in the air, or the air that you're already breathing on the inside, is that air constructive or non-constructive? Depends on what's in the air and what the white supremacists have allowed to be in the air or put into the air. So you really don't know, but everything is divided into that in answer to your question. That's keeping it real simple. When black people say, well, everybody talks about all the problems that we have, but what do? We go to these meetings and the leaders come up and introduce themselves with all these fancy titles and whatnot, but I'm just so tired of this situation. I mean, you leave the meeting 5 hours later and everybody's hugging and kissing and talking about the future of black people, but everything seems to stay the same. Well, it's very simple. We're not doing anything different. And we're not dividing what we do into those two simple categories, constructive, non-constructive. You're going to go to a Halloween party. First thing you ask, is this Halloween party constructive or non-constructive? And when you look at the structure of a Halloween party, there's no reason to believe there's anything constructive about a Halloween party. Nothing. Zero. So black people are going to have to face up to what we call a whole bunch of black traditions. Not to say anything about the conditions, the traditions that we have adopted from the white supremacists, but all of our so-called cultural backgrounds that we brag about and burning incense about and all like that, that incense that we burn, what does it actually do? If you burn incense, what is actually happening? A lot of black people got little stands set up in the summertime. Burning incense. So you examine everything. That's what I'm saying in answer to the question. Examine everything for those two categories, constructive, non-constructive. And black people will be on a roll if we start right this minute just making that decision in answer to the question. I'm going to divide every move that I make, everything that I say, into what is constructive and what is non-constructive. And how can you tell the difference? You can tell the difference by the results. You're taking a certain type of medication and you still feel sick, so you try another kind and you don't feel sick, and you become stronger and stronger and stronger. That medicine that you took that made you stronger is better than the medicine that you took where you didn't get well. It's a no-brainer. You go by the result. That's it. Results. That's all you're looking for. What's going to be the result? The white supremacists come around and make a proposal. Now we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and we want black people to participate in this, and we're going to participate in that. And so every black person should raise up their hand and say, well, we listened to you, sir, and you made these proposals, but we want to know what is going to be the constructive result. Because black people worldwide from now on are not, we have absolute zero interest in anything that doesn't produce constructive results. We've never taken that stand. We just join up with anything as long as it looks like there's some activity going on. Some changes are being made. It seems like everybody's out in the middle of the street boogalooing. So that automatically means that this is progress. That automatically means nothing of the kind. That's just more of the same of what we have been doing and getting the same results, which are non-constructive for the most part, because we are not dividing everything that we do and say into constructive and non-constructive. And that's all we really have to do. And we'll be on our way like lightning speed. We'll make 1,000 years of progress in 2 weeks.
All righty. Results. For those of you who are now listening or who have just joined the program, you are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, just simply dial 516-453-9921. Depress the number 1 button and you will get in line to be the next caller. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And I'm not saying that your Gmail will be read today, but it will go into a rotation, and trust me, there are about 56 Gmails ahead of you, so just keep that in mind. It probably won't be read today. Okay, information here. Brother Muko, if you're listening, give me a call. I have some information for you. And I got some also information from Pro Design 29 South. I've asked, and you've heard me ask Mr. Fuller about the Carl Nelson show that Mr. Fuller is on terrestrial radio. I think it's on WOL out of Washington, D.C. in the district. I was just informed that you can listen to the Carl Nelson show on ProduceJustice.com. Let's see here. Pro Design said you have to click on the current events tab and scroll down to view all of Mr. Fuller's shows. So thank you, Pro Design South, for that information. I'll do that. And Mr. Fuller just mentioned the word results, and a lot of people have emailed me about that show that he spoke with Dr. Randy Short. It's called Results, and I really like that particular one. But Mr. Fuller's interviews are all over social media, so you can pick it up just about anywhere. But I happen to like that one, Results, and apparently you do too. So thank you. Moving on with the show now. I'm going to butcher this name, but I'm going to try not to. Esosa from the Bronx in the 646. I'm going to get you in, and then how do you pronounce your first name?
Oh, you got it perfectly, Mr. Bobby.
Oh, did I? Oh, man, that was a mistake on my part.
I thought you would have butchered it much worse, but you got it right. Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah. It's an honor to speak with you, Mr. Fuller, for the first time. I wanted to ask you a question about cell phones, or so-called smartphones, rather. Now, you've lived a long time before the advent of so-called smartphones, and I wanted to ask you, because studies have shown that non-white people in particular are amongst the biggest users of smartphones, social media and whatnot. I wanted to ask you, in your observations, what have been the changes of the constructive behaviors of non-white people in particular before and after the advent of smartphones?
Well, I haven't seen any change in black people's behavior, and this is why black people are still in the shape that we're in. Black people have what we call black customs or black culture, and it's not worth 2 cents. What is culture? Culture is what you do. It's not some magic thing that you find in a box in the middle of the desert. Whatever you're doing, that's your culture. If it's a black person participating in a drive-by shooting, that is black culture at that moment because there's a black person participating in a drive-by shooting. See, black people talk about keeping something real more than anybody on the planet, but we're the most unrealistic people that ever existed. We won't call things exactly what they are. We think that everything has got some type of magic spookism behind it, something behind the curtain somewhere. I mean, that nobody can understand, but it's mysteriously moving around among everybody. And that's how we kind of look at black culture. It's supposed to be something real mysterious that you go into the desert and find, buried under some rock. If it's a black person cursing another black person out in the middle of the street, right this minute somewhere, that is black culture in action. That is the essence of black culture. If that's what most of the people or a significant number of the people are doing, or just one person doing it, that's black. Whatever you're doing at the moment you're doing it, that's your culture. Your culture is something, not something you get up in the morning and look under the bed and open some type of mysterious chest that you brought back from Egypt and say, now all the black culture is right here. Ooh, everybody come around and lower the lights and burn some candles because in this box is black culture. That's how we kind of think about black culture. Black culture is whatever you're doing at the moment that you're doing it, if it's a black person doing it. White culture is whatever a white person is doing at the moment that that white person is doing it. If it's driving a tractor and it's a white person driving a tractor, that's white culture. Why? He's doing it. He's driving a tractor. That's all it is. There's nothing else. There's nothing mysterious about anybody's culture, except mysterious if you don't understand what you're looking at, what you're looking at, and understanding what a person is doing when you're looking at them doing it. And so we need to get out all of this nonsense. Our heads are just full of loaded up, and the white supremacists love it. We just load our brains up with nonsense, pure foolishness, and try to make it look like it's something to glorify. No. Constructive, non-constructive. We need a constructive culture where a black person has a reputation for never doing anything or saying anything that's not going to have a constructive effect. Boy, wow. Try that on for size. That blows the whole world out of the water. I mean, think of every black person having a reputation. Here comes somebody who is a problem solver, because that's what we mean by constructive results. Problem solving, not problem making, but problem solving. Suppose we had that kind of reputation right now, and we can get it right now. All you got to do is just concentrate on doing it. By separating, like I've been saying, I'm going to keep saying it until I start seeing it on signs in downtown New York City. Constructive results. Not all these other empty slogans we got. They are all right to build up to the major slogans. And the major slogan should be on every sign when we're demonstrating. Constructive results, constructive results, constructive results. I mean, try those signs on for size. That puts a different frame of reference on a lot of things rather than I'm black and I'm proud. That's all right to start with if you're just climbing out of the crib. But a black person marching down the street saying I'm black and I'm proud, what does that actually mean functionally? I mean, so you're black and you're proud of being black. But the code book says that means absolutely nothing. Unless it means something. Does it mean constructive results? A black person who's proud of being black and you didn't have anything to do with being black? So what are you proud of? Stop and think about what you're saying. You didn't have, the black person who is black didn't have anything to do with being black. So take credit for something that you did. Duh.
Okay. All right, my brother. Thank you for calling in. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, T. Stephanie gave me permission to use her name. I had this question. She said, Mr. Fuller, I would like to ask you the following question. Donald Trump always refers to himself as, quote, the least racist, end of quote. When someone states he is racist or a white supremacist, Mr. Fuller, do you feel that Donald Trump is admitting he is a racist? Now, in my opinion, Donald Trump says this comment to make himself appear not racist at all. I am making reference to your theory, Mr. Fuller, that a non-white person cannot call a white person a racist, but a white person can only validate whether a white person is racist. Now, I'm paraphrasing, Mr. Fuller. Thank you very much in advance, T-Step.
Well, if that's a question, yes. A white person is the only person in the system of white supremacy can really validate, quote, unquote, that another white person is a racist. If Neely Fuller says that any white person is a racist, I'll just give this illustration. Where's my proof? Now, that's what somebody's going to ask. Oh, Hey, buddy, Neely Fuller, you going to call me a racist? You just called me. I'm a white man, and you called me a racist? Prove it. Prove it, boy. Where's your proof? And I say, well, I see you doing racist things, and so I'm calling you what I think you are. I'm calling you a racist. And that white person will say, yeah, I heard you say that. And I heard you say that you are proving it, but you have no proof of anything with your black self. You can't prove anything in the system of white supremacy. I'm a white man. Proof lies with me. Now, where's your proof? I can back up my proof, first of all, by putting a hurting on you. And you can't put a hurting on me, all right? How is that for proof? Like the character played by Jack Palance in the movie Shane, talking to Tory. Jack Palance, playing the part of Wilson, the gunslinger, talking to Tory. Tory called him a name, like you can call a white supremacist, all right? Or suspected white supremacist, that. But like in that movie Shane, there's a lesson there. The guy with the 2 6-shooters, who's a professional gunslinger, up against a farmer who was Tory. Some people remember the scene in the movie Shane. He said, I heard about you, Wilson. I said, what did you hear? What did you hear about me? I heard you a low-down lying Yankee. And then there was silence. And the gunslinger with the 2 guns sitting out, handles sitting out wide where he can grab them quick, professional, said 2 words, prove it. You call me a low-down lying Yankee. Prove that I'm a low-down lying Yankee. And so Tory, slapped leather, came up short because a guy with lightning speed already had his 6-shoot out and blew him across the road and stood there and smiled over his dead body. In other words, the white supremacists say that to black people all the time when we get in their face. Oh, you think that I'm a racist, Neely Fuller? Prove it. Because if I slap leather on you, I'll prove that I am whatever I say I am, and you are whatever I say you are. And you got no match for me because you got no power, boy. And you don't know anybody who can come and back you up except somebody that I choose, black or white, because I'm a master and you're not. You're a slave. The slave can't prove nothing to a master.
Okay.
Black
Mr.
people
Fuller,
have to understand that.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, she said this, though. She said, I would like for you to ask Mr. Fuller the following. And she said that Donald Trump always refers to himself as, quote, the least racist, end of quote, when someone states that he is a racist or a white supremacist. She said, Mr. Fuller, do you feel that Donald Trump is admitting he is a racist?
I don't think of it that way. I think of that's why I say we need a code. I just come right out of the code. And what does the code say? Any white person in the system of white supremacy who is able to be, underline able, to be a white supremacist should be suspected of being one. That's the counter-racist code. And you just stick with that. That's my recommendation for everybody. Any white person, any person classified as white, who is able to be a white supremacist, should be suspected by the victim of white supremacy of being a white supremacist, suspected. And you can use the word racist suspect. That's the term I use when I talk to white people. If a white person asks me, any white person who's able to be a racist would walk up and ask me, Neely Fuller, hey, I hear you talk about racism a lot. Do you think that I'm a racist? I'm a white man. I'm a racist. Or do you think that I'm a racist? And I'll say, sir, according to the code, I am duty bound to suspect that you are a racist if you're able to be one. You have to be able to be one. By able meaning what? Meaning you know the difference between one color and another. That makes you able. If you're able to tell one color from another, then in the system of white supremacy, sir, I am, as a victim of white supremacy, duty bound to suspect that you are one until proven different. Proven by whom? By me. That's the standard. That's what I mean by black people needing a code, so we don't bounce all over the place every time something comes up. We have something that's rigid, something that's locked in place, and we say the same thing over and over again until the thing that is being said is no longer necessary to be said. Because you say the most constructive thing.
Yes.
And stick with it. We need a code for everything, for the way we respond to every situation, what to do and what to say, and precisely word for word how to say it on the job and everything else. We need a code. That's why I'm trying to write one. That's the hardest thing for me to get people, black people, to understand. We want to play by ear. Just wait till the last minute and then try to get everything together. We need something that is solidly in place before things happen of what we are going to do and not going to do about that thing, and it has not even happened yet. But we got something in place to handle it. That's what a code is supposed to be for. The white supremacists have a code for everything. That's why they are successful at everything that they do when it comes to non-white people.
All righty. Okay, this is what we're going to do. See, Nick from Jersey, we're going to get you, and then Darnell from New York, and then Everett from Houston, we're going to get you, hopefully in that order. But before we do all of that, Mr. Fuller, this is the time for you to speak about your book. So take it away.
You can get the book, and the book is about everything that we're talking about right now. It's called the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code. It's supposed to make suggestions about what each and every non-white person, black person, person of color in the known universe can do about racism and about everything associated with racism, meaning all the little small things we do that add up to big things each and every day that will come up with the most constructive results in every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And that's what the book is designed to do, to give black people guidance toward having a code for what you do in economics and don't do, what you do in education and don't do, in entertainment, labor, law, politics. Politics meaning interaction with other people or with each other, because that's all politics is. When you're talking to someone, when you say good morning to someone, that's politics. Why? It has to do with people. That's all politics is, interaction between people. People relations. That's how it's described in the code book. It tells us how to use words, how to think of words in a way that we have never thought of words being used before. It tells you how to use the word America and how not to use the word America. Tells you how to, what to say when a person is a suspected white supremacist and what not to say. That's what we need. We need precise things to do and not do that will do what? Produce the most constructive results. Because if it doesn't produce constructive results, it's got no business being in a code. In fact, it's not code. Anything that doesn't work is not code. Code means something that works every time you do it. It doesn't fail you. You can always rely on it. You can be half asleep and just enact the code. Just say whatever the code says, do it, or say it, and it'll work for you even when you're not paying much attention to what you're doing or saying. But you followed the code. The white supremacists have that. Now that's what this book is supposed to help black people do. It's the missing thing, something that we have never had before or never even attempted to have. We just go around with a whole bunch of empty slogans. The slogans are fine, but a slogan is like a title of a book. You can have a fancy title on a book, but if the book doesn't have anything printed on the pages inside, it's just a fancy title of a book. And we think that that's the solution. We got to have a code. We got to have ingredients in filling this in the pie. You make a pie, it's not a pie unless you got some filling in it. That beautiful crust, the crust is fine. It took meticulously made. It's attractive, and it is some kind of tasty. But if it's supposed to be a pie, where's the filling? Black people never have a filling for the pie. We just got crust all over the place. No pie. The textbook for victims of white supremacy is supposed to have plenty of filling to back up those words on the cover. Substance. Go to it you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. And hopefully it'll give some guide in the direction that I think that we should be going. I'm certainly using it. I use my own book. I got to.
Okay.
Producejustice.com.
Producejustice.com. Okay. And for those who call in, don't forget the number is 516-453-9921. And when you get that, make sure you give the call screener your name and maybe the city that you are calling from. 7 Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, is at gmail.com is also the Gmail address that you can call, and we'll see what we could do for you there. Okay, let's go to Nick from New Jersey. I believe we got you. Yeah, there we go. Nick, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Good morning, Mr. Bobby.
Good morning.
Yes, I have a question on the economic section. Is making money, even if you don't like the job that you're doing, is that productive or is not productive?
Is making money constructive?
Yeah.
Yes, depending on what you use the money for. Money, like words, is just a tool. A tool for doing what? Like a pair of pliers or a spoon or a fork. These are tools. Money is a tool. A tool for doing what? Getting things done. So it depends on how you use money. You should look at the money that you have. It's called a medium of exchange. And the value of that money is how you use it. And here we go again. What do you use that tool called money for? You're going to either use it to produce something that's what? Constructive or non-constructive. That's all it is, in answer to your question. Sure.
Okay.
Anything that if you pick up a spoon or a fork, or a knife. You can use a knife to do what? To peel an apple. So you peel the apple and you eat the apple, and it has a constructive effect on your body, I have been told. Apples are very healthy. Or you can take that same knife and stab your sister. Now, what's more constructive? Peeling the apple and eating it to add nutrition to your body and sharing that apple with your sister, or taking that knife and plunging it into the chest of your sister? Is that constructive? Well, the record shows that it isn't. Constructive, non-constructive. That's all black people have to think about. We have allowed the white supremacists to take us on everything complicated trip that you can name, from drugs to whatever. Everything's so complicated, when really being on this planet is really simple. Constructive, non-constructive. The whole time you're here, and try to do everything that is constructive, and everything falls in place. Get rid of everything that is non-constructive. In answer to your question, pick up money and say, I'm fixing to move this money from my hand to somebody else's hand. And just make sure that whatever you get in return, whatever compensatory return you get for your investment of your money, that tool called money, has a constructive effect. Now, if you're buying some cocaine with that money, that's going to have a non-constructive effect. That's all you have to think about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nick, thank you. Don't be a stranger. Okay, Mr. Fuller, we have about 2 minutes before we go to the top of the hour, and I don't want to let anybody in so that I can give them due justice there. I will say this, for those of you who are on the line, particularly I'm looking at a couple of calls from the 832 area. Everett has already given his name, but that other person, please make sure that you give your name so that I can properly give you an introduction, particularly if I do butcher it. Okay, but we're going to do it early. All right, you have been listening to the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. We thank you for listening. If you have to go, don't be a stranger. Listen to us next week. For those who are waiting for the second hour, stay tuned. We will do that momentarily in about 10 seconds. Thank you for listening. All righty. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, particularly if you are a new caller, call this number, 516-453-9921. Press the number 1 button, and you will get in line to have your call answered by Mr. Fuller. Chat room is available. You can also hit me up there, and if I have a chance, I will read your chat comments. Also, Gmail, 7mrbobby@gmail.com, and I will do that. Also, speaking about Gmails, before I go to Darnell, let me do this. Mr. Fuller, this is a person from South Africa. They wanted to briefly ask you, Mr. Fuller says that non-white people must ask for help from white people, including those white people who practice racism. If a non-white person asks for help and gets it from a white person who practices racism, doesn't that beholden that non-white person to the white person who practices racism, thus giving strength to the system of white supremacy?
Yes, but it's also giving strength to the victim of white supremacy. On the back of the textbook for victims of white supremacy, the seeds of the destruction of white supremacy, the system of white supremacy, is built in to the system itself. For instance, black people are prisoners of war. That's the way to look at it. Now, you can't work outside of the prison if you are a prisoner. You're inside the prison. All black people are inside of the prison of white supremacy. The system of white supremacy is a world prison. So if you're black and you're born on planet Earth, you are inside of the prison system called, in capital letters, the system of white supremacy. So you can't work outside of what you're inside of, because you're inside. So, being that, you become like a tumor. But where are you going to gain your strength? Like a tumor does in any body. It gains its strength from its surroundings. So you take from the surroundings that you're in. You're inside the prison. Now, to give an illustration of what I mean, I refer again to the movie Shawshank Redemption. I don't know whether the people in South Africa have that movie available to them. But if they do, you can look at the movie Shawshank Redemption and study the white character and study the black character. For that matter, all the characters in the movie. But the principal character in the movie is a character called Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins, a movie actor. But he's inside of a prison, along with all the other prisoners. But it's something different about Andy. Andy intends to destroy the prison, not only by getting out of the prison, but to actually make the prison different from what it was when he went in. And how did he do that? He used his opponent's strength against him. That's the formula. It's called political jiu-jitsu. Why? Because you don't have any strength of your own. So when you don't have strength of your own, the law of compensation says you act like a tumor. You absorb the strength of what you're into. And then you use that strength to destroy what is contained in you. That's what Andy did with Warden Norton. First of all, by worming his way into Warden Norton's office. All right? And then he got access to more power by doing that. He was absorbing what was around him and adding strength to himself by so doing. Because where else would he get strength? You can't get strength from something that you don't have. So you absorb the strength from anything that's strong that's around you. That's a law of nature. But you have to know how to use it. Mm-hmm. So Andy had a code, and that's what we need. In answer to the question, yes, you work against the very thing that's opposing you by getting things from that source that's opposing you and using those things against the source. Now, one might say, well, Fuller, you're revealing that right on the air to the whole world. You better believe I am, because that's a law of the universe. And nobody violates the laws of the universe. It's just a matter of you do what you say you're going to do, and you do it. And the person who is standing there watching you do it knows that you're doing it, but you still do it. That's the magic of a compensatory counter-racist code. People have told me, Fuller, don't you know the white supremacists have your code? said, are you dumb? Are you that dumb? You got your code all out here. I mean, the white supremacists read your code, so they know how to counteract you. You're putting out a strategy, so they read your strategy, and they come back at you. They just come up with a strategy that will combat your code. I say, yeah, but they can't combat the code that's Neely. They can combat the code that's Neely Fuller's, but this ain't Neely Fuller's code. These are the laws of the universe. And anytime the white supremacists think that they can violate the laws of the universe, good luck with that. That's the yin and yang. Okay, fire will burn, water is wet. You can only do so many things on this planet. The white supremacists have run out of things to do. That's the whole thing. And then they have to recycle the same things they've always done to stay in business. But you can weaken that and do it with them standing right there watching you weaken it. Truth in the face of falsehood is always more powerful. So you go with that. And then you go with justice and correctness. And you have a code for doing so. And the white supremacists will resist it. But at the same time, their act will fall apart. Why? Because it's an institutionalized aberration in the first place. It's not solid. It has weaknesses. So in answer to the person's question, a code is designed to feed off of the weaknesses in the system of white supremacy, because everything that shouldn't be has weaknesses. And you punch all the buttons that's in those weaknesses, with them standing right there watching you do it, but they're helpless in stopping you from doing it. That's the formula.
Okay. That's the formula. Let's go to the 717. And Darnell, hey, we finally got you in. Go ahead. There you go.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, my question for today is, what can the victims of the system of white supremacy expect from the results of the recent election? I would like to stay on the line, Mr. Bobby.
Okay.
What can the victims expect?
Yes.
More refined white supremacy. So how do you counteract that? By having a code, constructive, non-constructive. Just continue thinking that way from this point on, and you don't get confused. Republican, Democrat, communist, socialist, capitalist, you don't have to be bothered with none of that. Everything is constructive or non-constructive when it comes to you, when it comes to me. That's all you need. You don't need a whole lot of other stuff. You don't need to say about this legislation and that legislation. Just hold up your hand and say, sir, ma'am, this thing you're fixing to do, is it going to have a constructive result or a non-constructive result? And I'll wait for your answer. Don't help them with the answer. Let them answer. And then have another question ready. If you're not getting the answer, that's the final answer. Because there is a final answer to every question or every series of questions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the codified way. Constructive, non-constructive. That's all black people got to do on a job or anything else. Sir, ma'am, this thing you're talking about, even if I don't understand too much about it, is it going to have a constructive effect, a result, or a non-constructive result? And if it's going to be constructive how? That's another question. Stay in the question lane. That's it. Questions and answers will do what? It will take everybody right where they should be. It won't take everybody where they want to be. But questions and answers, that's the laws of the universe now, not Neely Fuller's law. Questions and answers will always take everybody right where they should be. But there's got to be enough questions and enough answers to get those what? non-constructive results. That's what.
Mm-hmm. All righty. All right. Thank you, Darnell, for your question. I'll put you on so you'll stay on. Okay. Mr. Fuller, this refined racism is also in the word guide on page 330, 331, and 332, 333. You give an explicit definition of that for those who are new to the program and want to know about refined racism. You went into great detail about that, Mr. Fuller. Is there any particular reason why you did that before we go to Everett?
Yes. The page numbers that you just outlined where that is, refined racism.
Mm-hmm.
See, you have racism goes through 4 stages. Establishment, that's the beginning stage. I don't know when it began. And then they maintained it. That's the second stage. Maintenance of white supremacy. That's keeping it going. You establish white supremacy, then you keep it going. Once you establish something, you want to keep it going once you establish it. And then you expand it, like expanding your business, because racism is a business. The system of white supremacy is a world business, okay? So once you get your business maintained, established and maintained, you start looking around and say, well, hey, this is pretty good. It's working pretty nice. Now I'm going to expand it. Expand by meaning what? Well, I'm going to take in more people. I'm going to hire more people. And I'm going to take in more people into the system. And I'm going to make my system that I have established and maintained stronger. I'm going to make it better than what it was yesterday. All right? And, that's what squirrels do. They're in the business of expanding, their nest and whatnot, make it better, bring in some more twigs and all like that. Winter's coming, okay? So you're expanding. You're making your business a little better than it was when you first started. The white supremacists do the same thing. Then they go into the 4th stage, which is the final stage, refinement, meaning it works almost on automatic. So you can just set up and the machinery is running while you're asleep. And the system of white supremacy has been in the refinement stage for some time. Now, every now and then, somebody wants to go back to the establishment stage. And that's when white people get into big fights among themselves because some white person wants to go back and say, I want to go back to when we got up every morning and got a whip and whipped these black people. Just beat them up, kick them around all day long, yell at them, scream at them, terrorize them. But the refined white supremacist says, oh, no, we've been there, done that. We do that every now and then for recreation or just to keep in shape. But that's the establishment stage. We don't have to go back to the establishment stage. We got this thing running smoothly now. So how you handle black people now is you give them a little position and about 4 or 5 titles and give them a suit and a tie and pat them on their head and tell them they're doing a good job. That's the refinement stage. But don't give them any power. That's where we are now. That's where we are for the most part all over the world. And you got those 2 divisions of white people now, some who want to go back to the hammer and the rope and all that and the gun and just make black people miserable all day long, put the knee on their neck. Well, see, the refined white supremacists will come along and say, oh, that's horrible. Don't do that. Get your knee off of that Negro's neck. Hey, we already got him in a noose. I mean, the noose is all around his mind. Keep him doing stupid stuff. That's how you handle them. Have them confused about money. Have them confused about entertainment. Have them confused in the area of politics. Have them confused about sex and religion, for sure. Get into their minds. And you don't have to put your knee on their neck. Stop doing that. And if you don't stop doing it, that attracts attention. That stirs them up. That puts them in the street talking about Black Lives Matter. You don't have to do none of that stuff. I mean, just drug them up. Let them act silly. Let them kill each other by the bushel. That's the refinement stage. So in answer to the question, that's the refinement stage. That's where most of the white supremacists on the planet want to keep it. But you got a few who just like the exercise of, well, you mean to tell me I can't kick my Negro no more up and down the street with all the other Negroes standing there looking and helpless to do anything about it? They say, well, yeah, we can do that, but that's not the easy way to do it. That's the hard way. It's better to get in their minds, because when you get in their minds, you can have them killing each other, kicking each other, cursing each other. Don't never have a kind word for each other. That's where we got them now in 2020. Keep it that way. That's easy. Make your job easy, not hard. That's what the refined white supremacists are telling the establishment, the old school white supremacists. Put them guns away. You don't need all that. You got these black people right where we want them. Their minds are just as messed up as they can be. They're just as confused as ever. Keep them that way. And you can go to sleep, and they will enslave themselves. They're happy to be slaves. Just give them a fancy title and some shiny boots or some shoes with your name on them, and they'll go crazy.
All righty. Phone lines are jammed. I can tell you that right now. Thank you for your calls. I mean, it is really jammed. Let's see if we can get as many as we can in. Let's go to the 832. And Everett, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr.
Good morning,
Fuller.
sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yes. In the code, VGQ, victims guaranteed qualification. If I make a statement saying Donald Trump is a potential white supremacist, but yet he does actions of a white supremacist, what's the difference between VGQ? Well, let me rephrase it. What makes a VGQ true? Well, it won't be longer a VGQ. It will be a very true statement.
I don't understand the question.
Yeah, let me rephrase it, Mr. Fuller. VGQ, what makes a VGQ true? If I say the sky is blue, is that VGQ or I told the absolute truth?
No, VGQ means victims guaranteed qualification. You are guaranteed the qualification of saying anything, if you're a person of color, about race, racism, and or counter-racism. Counter-racism means saying something against racism without another black person criticizing what you are saying. In fact, anything that you say about race or racism or counter-racism, that's what that VGQ is about. You are qualified to say that because you have earned that by being a victim. Victims guaranteed qualification. And if Neely Fuller is asked about what you said and whether or not he agrees, I am duty-bound, according to code, to say one thing. You said what you said. And if they want to know anything about what you meant by what you said, they can ask you. That's the way that works. I am not supposed to comment on what you said other than to say, you said what you said. Just
okay,
like
Mr. Fuller, now that you said that, if I say this, David Duke represents white supremacy. Is that VGQ or is that truth?
Well, you made the remark. So you said what you said. So you have to understand what VGQ is, according to the code.
What is VGQ? What is
VGQ
I'm
means
confused.
if you are a victim of white supremacy, VGQ means victims guaranteed qualification. You are qualified to say anything that you want to say about race, racism, and or counter-racism, meaning your recommendation about what to do about it. That's counter-racism. And people like Neely Fuller, a fellow victim, I am not qualified to say anything about what you said except to say you said what you said. That's to keep me from getting into an argument with you about anything dealing with racism, which is what black people need. Black people, I turn on my radio all the time. I hear black people going at each other with that, what I call prison argument. Two prisoners at the bottom of the ship, two slaves at the bottom of the ship, arguing about whose chains are shinier than the others, or who messed up that got them both on the ship, or who did this and who did that. Now that fight that they're going to have down there at the bottom of the slave ship is not going to change their status not one bit as slaves.
Can a VGQ be true?
And that VGQ is designed to do something that black people love to do all day long, everywhere. And that's get in arguments with each other about how to handle racism. We love that. That's one of the greatest sports that we have other than football and basketball. Get in arguments with other black people about how best to handle the system of white supremacy. VGQ is designed to absolutely prevent that from happening. No argument, none. It ain't going to happen.
Mr. Fuller, one more thing.
Now, black people who are used to doing that hurts their feelings big time. Because black people make a whole career, many of us, just going around going around seeing what some other black person got to say about race, and then spending 15 months criticizing them, going on the radio. You hear it. Many of us have participated in it because we're trained that way. Go at each other about how best to handle racism. VGQ is designed to stop that forever by saying I can only say one thing about what another black person says about race, and that is he said what he said, or if it's the case of a female, she said what she said. And if you want anything else said about it, don't ask me. Go ask the person who said it. End of story.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Edward,
thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
You're
Fuller.
welcome. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you, sir.
Here.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to do this a little early. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And to get in contact with the show, all you need to do is call 516-453-9921, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. And I can't tell you that your Gmail will be read today, but at some point it will be read, like the brother from South Africa that wrote in, and Mr. Fuller did answer his question, but it was a little while ago. I did that spot right there because generally at the end of the hour we take a break, but I just decided I would do it just a little bit early. Hey, there we go. So we can affect the music, coming on. But again, 516-453-9921. Make sure you press the number 1 button, and you'll get in line for the next call. Okay, coming up, we got Imani, and then we got, let's see, who is this? Sean? Yeah, Sean Glenn. I think we have you up here. I think you're next. Anyway. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, let's go to the 886 area, and that's going to be Imani. Imani, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Excuse me for the sound. I'm on my treadmill. Just wanted to, Mr. Fuller, could you speak on briefly the incorrectness of sex between white people and their non-white victims under the system of racism, white supremacy, and why that is not constructive?
It looks like he's speaking in something that's kind of hollow there. So
speak on. Hey, Imani, could you say that again, because there was some music in the background? Okay, it's gone now. Go ahead. Could you ask that question again?
Yes. I was just calling to request that Mr. Fuller briefly speak on the incorrectness of sex between white people and their non-white victims under the system of racism, white supremacy, and why that still is a major act of racism, white supremacy today.
Why is it a major what?
Why it's still sex between white people and their non-white victims. It still is a major problem today.
Why we still have a problem today?
Oh, well, let me start over on what I am requesting. I'm requesting you, Mr. Fuller, to briefly speak on the incorrectness of white people having sex with non-white people under the global system of racism and white supremacy.
Oh, okay.
And why it still is.
Why, if I understand the question, why is it not correct, or rather, why is it not constructive for a white person to have sexual intercourse with a non-white person during the system of white supremacy? Is that the question?
Yes, sir, essentially.
Okay. It is non-constructive because it has a non-constructive result. Why? It causes confusion. Why does it cause confusion? Because the system of white supremacy is still in place. So now you have more black people and more white people taking sides about that relationship now. All right? And it's an uneven relationship. It's not equal. It's like the prison master, which would be the white person, going into the prison cell, and even though they're passionate about each other, the people having sex in the prison cell, I hear noise.
Yeah, I do.
I hear noise.
Is that you, Lonnie? Okay, go ahead. It's clear now. Go ahead.
All right. If the white person becomes a child molester, okay? Why? Because black people in the system of white supremacy have been made into children. That's why they call us boy and girl, sometimes gal. All right? Why? Because we're in that type of position. Children are beholden to their parents, even though our parents, in the case of white supremacy, are illegitimate. Racist man and racist woman. They killed off our parents, and they took their place. So we are beholden. We are dependent. The non-white people, the black people of this planet are dependent on racist man and racist woman for everything in all areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, politics, you know. So, in answer to the question, it's like we are prisoners of war because we're still in captivity. That war has never been over. You have to look at it like that, prisoners of war. So the prison master goes into the cell. Now, the prisoner may even, quote unquote, be real passionate about the prison master, because the prisoner just might be sexually. Sex has a way of finding its own way. And so the prison master goes into the cell and has sexual intercourse with the prisoner, which is the black person. That's what's happening in the system of white supremacy. White people who have sexual intercourse with black people in the system of white supremacy is the same as a so-called adult or a prison master having sexual intercourse with a minor and or with a prisoner. Put that picture sharp in your mind. Prison master going into the prison cell. They are not equals. They're having equal sexual intercourse, but when that act is over, the prison master walks out of the cell. That's the big difference. The white person walks out of the cell. The white person is no longer in the cell because the white person is never really in the cell in the first place because they got the keys. The black person doesn't have a key. The door slams on the black person. So sexual intercourse between a white person and a black person in the system of white supremacy is non-constructive. That's the equation. It ain't personal, it's business.
Okay. All righty, Imani. Thank you for your question, and don't be a stranger. Mr. Fuller, let's see, Reggie said this. He said, how the code describes white supremacy is a tough pill to swallow, Mr. Fuller, when first heard or read, just like the description of blacks and non-whites being prisoners. After thinking and pondering, I found the definition that you used and the statement of being a prisoner of war to be true. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. All right, thank you, Reggie. Let's see here, and this one right here. This comes from Sean Glenn. Says this, can you ask Mr. Fuller a little about racial showcasing, page 28, paragraph number 4, in the revised edition. After reading this section, I noticed I've been a victim of racial showcasing for many years at my old job. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for opening my eyes to this. Mr. Fuller, I want you to speak about a little about a racial showcasing, so let me get my book out here. It's at page 28.
Oh, yes, sir, but I'm not looking at it right now. But basically, racial showcasing just means, in the old days, it was all black faces to the back, all right? You know, in other words, black people stand back. We want all the white people down front. Well, racial showcasing is the white supremacists decided, hey, we can fool a whole lot more people about black progress if we put all black faces up front, or put a significant number of them up front, give them a fancy title, and let them sit up front and make it look like the white people are sitting in the back and that they are the servants of the people who are sitting up there in all of the royal seats. We'll get them some fancy chairs and whatnot. All right, places, just like on a movie set. All of the black people now come down and sit on the front and look like you have a position of authority. Get that position of authority look on your face. And we white people we'll sit back in the back and look like we're the servants. That's racial showcasing. Lots of that going on all over the world right now. And it works. Works for whom? The white supremacists. That's whom. They're the ones started up. That's all racial showcasing is. All those black faces that were sitting in the back, bring them down front. Take those raggedy clothes off of them. That looks terrible. dress them up, put them in royal finery clothes, white ties and tails, the women in gowns, all dressed up, real fancy. Us white people will look like, well, we're just huddled back there in the back. I mean, getting ready to be of some service if we are called on. That does what? Makes the black people think that they have arrived. They have no further to go. They're all down front now. They got all the power. But we'll pull all the power because we are the power behind all that showcasing. Because we don't give them no power. Black faces up front, but with no power to do anything but make them look like they're powerful. Powerful to whom? Other black people. And then the other black people, when they don't get what they want, they throw rocks at the people we're showcasing. That's what showcasing is about. They're no longer accusing us of anything. They're accusing these handkerchief heads, all dressed up in finery, black people who are down front, who have absolutely no power over nothing, but they look like they got it all. That's the key. Keep them fooled. Okay. And it's work.
Okay. All righty. Let's go to the 202 in the district. That's where you're at, Mr. Fuller, in the district. Joshua, you are now live with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby, and good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you. My question, I voted for Biden for the quote-unquote lesser of two evils. Yesterday and today, co-workers and associates have been bombarding me with celebrations over the election. I mean, it's not as bad as when Obama got elected, but could you help me with some constructive codified questions to start, conversations, since I have to participate in these conversations, because refined racism is so confusing. People at my job and stuff, they know that, I'm a person that thinks about racism, but I'm not an argumentative person. I don't put things in people's face. They just know that when they invite me to a conversation, I'm going to have some type of feedback that's going to, to question the white supremacist agenda, behind things.
So it comes down to what do you do? Is that correct? According to the code?
Right.
That's why we need a code. The code says about that, because the code covers that. You don't participate in any celebration about anything, as long as white supremacy exists. So the question is, does white supremacy still exist? And the answer is yes. So what's the celebration for? That's the question. But you don't criticize them celebrating. All right? Here's what.
Right.
They'll just, if they ask you why don't you celebrate, you say you're not qualified to celebrate anything until, at least at the minimum, the system of white supremacy no longer exists. Racism no longer exists. According to the code, that's the only time, if you're going to have a celebration, that you have one if you're black. But now the black people who choose to celebrate, you can't criticize them either. Why? Because of VGQ. See, everything in the code is precise, and the code is supposed to cover everything. So you can't criticize the black person who is celebrating. The balloons and the whistles and all that, break out the champagne and the gin and fall all over the desk acting crazy and whatnot or whatever. But you can't criticize that. Why? That's their reaction. That's VGQ. That is their way of expressing how they think. But if they ask you why you are not doing it, you give that answer according to the code if you choose to do so. See, everything in the code is a matter of choice. You don't have to do it, but I do it. People had a celebration for me when I retired from my job, but I told them to enjoy themselves. And then I quietly dismissed myself from the celebration, not because I didn't appreciate it. I did appreciate it, but I didn't ask for it because I don't participate in celebrations of any kind, period. Prisoner of war of the white supremacists, I don't forget that for 2 minutes. I ain't got no business celebrating. I'm a soldier. Soldiers ain't got no business celebrating even when they celebrate, because soldiers do celebrate. But like in that movie, The Cruel Sea, after all those ships were sunk by those German U-boats, and finally that Corvette happened to track one of those submarines, one of those German submarines, happened to track it. They got lucky enough to track it because they were using primitive equipment, and they brought it to the surface. And the gun crew on that Corvette that brought it, that German submarine, to the surface by dropping depth charges on it, they started cheering. And the captain of that ship immediately told them, stop that cheering and open fire on the rest of those people you see on the deck of that sub, which they promptly did because they followed orders. But the point is, he said, hey, we're in a war. You don't stop to cheer nothing. You fight every moment that you're here. Don't you forget for 1 second why you're here. This war isn't over. You sink one German submarine and you think the war is over and you're cheering? I'm not having that on my ship. Open fire on the rest of those people on that deck that are firing that machine gun, even though it's ineffective. They're out of range. But that twin Bofar you got, that automatic cannon shooting those 40 millimeters, it ain't out of range of that sub. You blow them, the kingdom come. We ain't playing out here. This ain't no game. You think this is football? Black people need to heed that message.
Yes.
We need to stop cheering anything. 50-yard line won't do. 99 and a half won't do. Did you get into the end zone, and did you do it every season and every game? Not just the Super Bowl, all the bowls, until you bowled it all over. Lights out in every stadium, and you were the top of the charts in every game. Anything less than that, don't call for a single cheer. You keep on grinding.
Thank you,
That's
Joshua,
cool.
for your call, and don't be a stranger here. Mr. Fuller, Afro-astrology is saying this, that some are saying that Biden will die soon and that Kamala will become the president, all by design. I don't know if there was a question in there, but maybe that was VGQ. Some are saying that Biden will die soon and that Kamala will become the president, all by design. Okay. All righty. Let's do this. Let's go to the 832. I think that's Houston. I'm not sure, but Isaac, got you on.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good morning. Mr. Fuller, question. So I think the statement that you have that starts the show, and I think it's referenced a lot when talking about your work, the statement goes, if you don't understand white supremacy, then everything else will confuse you. And the question that I have is, this is the first question, should that statement be, if you understand white supremacy, then nothing else will confuse you? The inverse, because I think that is where I guess your work may be stifling. This is just my opinion, but in a person's perception is their reality, right? So if you think that you understand white supremacy and you in turn understand everything else, then in your mind you've won the war, right? So I guess what do you think about that statement?
I think it's a statement of opinion.
Okay.
See, here again, that comes under VGQ. You're making a statement, and then you're asking a question about what I think about the statement made. I think your statement is made and should be considered. Okay. You said what you said. See, that's what I mean by code. You can't get lost with the code.
Right.
All right? So I have to respond to what you just said by saying, you said what you said. What you said comes under VGQ. It's about race, racism, and or counter-racism. So every victim of racism can look at everything the way that he or she chooses to look at it and express it that way. And I have to recognize that as being fully valid. There's no way that I can criticize it or evaluate it. I can't even evaluate it. I just say that you said what you said, and everybody in the world now who's listening have heard what you said, and they can evaluate it for what it's worth, because it all comes down to what? What you can use to get what? A constructive result. By me making that statement the way I did, I get a constructive result for myself. Now, others, when they look at it, they may not get the constructive result. So then don't use it.
Yeah. Okay, and secondly, that tension, when I studied your work and Dr. Chris Wilson's work as well, it seems that without having a in your mind you perceiving perceiving that you are you understand white supremacy, then without that you continue to be a victim. And I guess I'm probably just making a statement because I'm like you just said, you won't it's just a statement, but that's concern is that without having this perception of not being a victim, then you will always be a victim. And this kind of goes back to your point about the prison analogy that you always use. I have a friend of mine that was in prison that spent 15 years in prison, but he said he never spent a day in prison because in his mind, he was free. And that, again, is my thought about the work and the shift that needs to be made with the listeners, is that you have to at some point, evolve to an understanding that white supremacy, is not the universe. So the universe is what you need to understand, and the universal laws are what you need to understand, and not white supremacy. White supremacy is inside the universe. It's not universal law. So if you, understand these universal laws and these universal principles, then you'll understand that white supremacy is in the world, and it's something that people practice, but, you're able to see it, you're able to maneuver, and you're able to not be a victim of it, once you have that understanding that, it's something that's in the world. But if you understand universal law and universal principles, then is something that can easily be defeated and sidestepped and, maneuvered around, but it comes with the first step in claiming that you are, you understand the way this thing works, and you understand how to move, beyond it, even though it is the, biggest system of government in the world, it's not the universe. It's not the principles of the universe. So, with that understanding, your perception gives you the victory, and then from there you can maneuver and not be victim anymore.
All righty.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
yeah,
Isaac. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you very much, Isaac, and don't be a stranger here. We're pressed up against time, but don't be a stranger, okay?
All right, appreciate it.
All right. Mm-hmm. Okay, Swa and Ben, you're online, but we don't really have enough time to get you in. So, Swa, this. Do like you did last week. Either email me or Gmail me or call back next week, and I'll make sure that they put you two at the front of the line. That's Ben in the 507, the Swall out in Los Angeles, the 213, because if I get Mr. Fuller on here, it's not going to be enough time to give you what you need on that, because we do have to get his book in here at the end. So do that for me and for the show, and then we'll get you on. Mr. Fuller, before we get to your book, Miss Anonymous wrote this. She said, "Why do some black females always let an unemployed black male live off them and sometimes mistreat them verbally or physically abuse them? And what is the cause? What causes a black male to think like this and do this to black females, even if the black females have a child by that type of black male?"
Because black males are trained by the white supremacists to react that way. And they're going to continue to act that way as long as we have the system of white supremacy, which is why I wrote the book about we'll have to get rid of the system of white supremacy to straighten out all these problems. There's no way around it. That's what the book that I have written claims. Black people, many of them, think that we can solve our individual problems without dealing with racism in a way that we're getting rid of racism and all of the effects of racism and replace it with constructive results, which means you have to get rid of racism in order to do that. Otherwise, you're going to continue to have it. That's set in cement. That's not going to change. The black females who think that they can squirm away around that dealing with black males, that's an empty wish. It's not going to happen, ladies, period. You have to be real serious, and many black ladies now, as we have seen some signs of in the last half a year, are scared about this racism thing. Everybody who is, every non-white person, you think you can solve a major problem without dealing with the white supremacists? Well, we've tried to do that and tried to do it and tried to do it, tried to find a way to squirm and wheeze and figure out that there's some cracks in the armor. No, the white supremacists are very thorough. Everything that you try to do is going to turn to nothing when it comes to what you call black male-female relations. You can get it workable. I'm doing that. Just barely workable. But getting it the way that you want it to be, that is absolutely not going to happen in the system of white supremacy. That's a guarantee. The way that it ought to be, it's not going to happen. And any person that claims that it is happening is faking it, or it's a whole lot that they're not aware of. But the white supremacists will not allow black male and female relations to be the way it ought to be in the system of white supremacy. You absolutely have to get rid of the entire system of white supremacy to make black male and female interactions work the way it should. That's an absolute. Now, I either made a statement that's true or I made a statement that's false.
Oh, okay. All righty. Hey, Ben in the 507, either Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, or you can have your question for next week. Make sure that you tell the screener that who you are, and I have you down in here just in case somebody tries to take your spot, and we will get you in here as Sway just did. He's going to Gmail me his question, and then I'll read his first. Okay. So do that for me, Ben, because we don't have enough time. Because we got to get Mr. Fuller in the remaining 2 minutes to speak about his book. Mr. Fuller?
Okay, and this is also kind of encapsulates a response to the statements that were being made about the statement about if you don't understand white supremacy. One of the callers called in, the last one of the callers. This book is for people who perceive themselves to be victims of white supremacy. I keep reiterating that. A lot of callers down through the years have said, well, I'm not a victim of white supremacy because I don't see myself that way. Then the book is not for you. The book is for people who believe that white supremacy is real and that it affects everything that a black person does. Not only affects, but dominates, even when the black person is not aware that he or she is being dominated. And all of her thoughts are his thoughts, speech, and action. So this book is designed to help each individual black person weave their way through the system and in the process destroy the system and replace it with a system of justice. That's what the book is for. That each victim, each and every day, erode the system of white supremacy and replace it with the system of justice. You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. What to say, what to do, what to not say, what to not do in order to achieve that constructive result. That's what the book is about. Go to producejustice.com.
All righty, there you heard it, producejustice.com. Okay, we had a lot of callers today, so Mr. Fuller and myself do thank you ever so much for calling. The chat room was off the hook. The callers were off the hook. There were so many of them. Sometimes we just don't have time to get them all, and we wish we could, but we're only allotted these 2 hours. But thanks for listening. I will say that. And thanks for contacting us via the email and also for your chats. All the books are in, so you can go to producejustice.com to get the books. Mr. Fuller can be heard. Mr. Fuller, by the way, this program, is it also recorded on producejustice.com?
As far as I know, I've been told,
good.
I guess.
Good.
I'd like for it to be reproduced everywhere. I mean, I'm trying to reach everybody in the world because it's a world problem. And it should have been solved by now. This is absurd. This is the year 2020. This mess should have been over a long time ago.
All righty. All right. Again, callers, thank you. Mr. Fuller, thank you. My producers, the engineers, we thank you. And callers, we thank you. We'll try to do better next week. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Thank you.